Welcome, everybody. We are back. We are here for another amazing interview, one that I am so excited to bring to you guys, one I've been excited to do for at least the last month. I'm just so happy to be able to bring my guests to you guys. And as you guys know, anyone who listens to me, you know that one of the topics that I first started researching, and the only reason I ever did really start researching it is because, as I've told you guys, my mother at a very young age in her early teens had an experience that definitely pertains to this. And I just had her here for company recently, and I actually had her tell me the story, and you can still visibly see her shaking when she tells this story. And it was so many years ago, and it still affects her when she tells this story. And I remember her telling me this story as a very young child, and it was at that moment that I remember going to the library and I started diving into this topic, looking into anything, and then over the years, it's something I keep going back to and researching because I find it fascinating on so many different levels. So I am excited. I have an author here with me. They did just write the book that just came out this year, Triangle UFOs of the United Kingdom, and I'm excited to have them here. And I have so many questions, and I'm excited to hear about all the research they've done. So let's go ahead. Enough talking from me. I want to welcome you, Colin Saunders. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, Rick. I'm good, thank you. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing great. As you can tell, I'm very excited to be talking to you about this. I find, as I was saying at the just the beginning there, I find this a topic that I've, for the reasons I mentioned with my mother, is what started me looking into this topic, and it's led me all my life. I've been researching it. I just want to let people know, just so they know, who is Colin. Give us a little bit about who you are and what led you to write this book.
Okay, Rick. Like you said, my name's Colin Saunders, United Kingdom. Basically, I was never into any UFOs. I was not a member of any UFO groups, anything along those lines. Um, but we had a most amazing experience. Now, before I get to the sighting, I just want to give you a brief history of my working career, so you know a little bit about myself
Perfect.
and why I also think I make a good witness. So basically, I'm now 64. I'll be 65 this year. I spent all of my life as a draftsman, as an electrical design draftsman. Now, quite noticeably in my career, I have worked in the aircraft industry. I worked in Germany, in Hamburg. I worked there for a year on the Airbus, the early ones, the A300, the A320. I also spent a couple of years working in Sweden for Saab Aerospace. Saab built a civilian 34-seater in a town called Linköping. I spent 2 years there. I spent a year working in the cockpit and a year working on the engines and the wings.
Oh, wow.
All to do with electrical drafting.
Mm-hmm.
I also spent a couple of 18 months in New Zealand working in refrigeration, again drafting, electrical drafting. And also noticeably, I did spend a year working in Aberdeen in Scotland for Chevron Petroleum. Now, I was based on shore in Aberdeen, but I did have a few offshore visits to the platforms. Now, the thing about that was when you go out to a platform, you make a note of the work that's been done. When you get back on shore, you draw it all up. Mm-hmm. You've got to get it right. You can't get onto a helicopter, fly back out to the platforms if you've missed something. So you go over and over again, get all the details and make sure you get it right, and then draw it up as soon as you get back to the drawing office. Now, that sort of training came in invaluable on the night of the UFO sighting because I tried to take in as much information as possible. And as soon as we got home, started drawing it, and then over the next few weeks started building models. And over the last 24 years, we've been building models. And the final model I have is an exact copy, basically, of what we saw that night.
Wow.
And the actual experience was in March 1999, the 31st of March 1999. So that's a brief history of of my career and why I think I made such a good witness on the night.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so important too, because with your background, you can go, as you said, you are paying close attention to details, which is amazing. Because I know, like, through a lot of the research I've done with UFOs and stuff, people give you a very loose definition that, but the best they can of what they've seen, and they vary so much. But I think you're very correct when you say that. With your experience, it definitely gives you an attention to detail, and it's fascinating that as soon as this happened, which I want to hear about, that you went home and right away started drawing up what you saw, and over the years, you've got a model now of the exact thing that you remember seeing. So take us back to what you saw. I'm so excited to hear, like, bring us to that moment.
Okay, it's quite an incredible story, to be honest. and I'm just an ordinary guy. But fortunately, I was with my family as well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was my mother-in-law's birthday. She was 72 that day. And so we decided to go out for a bar meal to a public house in the countryside. Now, there were 2 carloads of us. My wife was driving, so I was in the car with my wife, and my mother-in-law, we went and picked her up. And my daughter, who was 12, she was in the car with us as well. In the second vehicle was my brother-in-law. He lived next door to my mother-in-law. He bought the house next door to his mother. And he's got a French partner, and she brought 2 of her grandparents over, and we were all going out in 2 vehicles for a meal. And it's important I mention that because later on it's a bit strange. There is a lot of high strangeness about this sighting as well. It wasn't just a nuts and bolts sighting, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
So basically, we went out to this public house called the White Lion in Paleton, which is in Warwickshire. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's right in the countryside. We had a bar meal, a couple of drinks, and then we came to leave. So we set off first. My wife was driving. My mother-in-law was sitting next to my wife in the front seat, and I was in the back on the near side, and my daughter was next to me. And I remember looking around and seeing the old French lady struggling to get into the second vehicle, the Range Rover. So my brother-in-law was helping her to get into the vehicle, and I thought, well, they'll catch us up on the way back because they won't be far behind us.
Right.
So off we set through the countryside. And I have to say, it's pitch black. There were no street lights whatsoever. And we came up to the main road that takes us back to where we was living at Hinckley in Leicestershire, which is called the Fosse Way. That's an old Roman road built on ley lines for people who are interested in ley lines. And a little bit further along, it joins the A5, the Watling Street, which is another Roman road that's apparently built on ley lines. But again, there's no lights on the Fosse Way. It's just total darkness. So as we approached the turning, somebody said, "Oh, we're turning onto the Fosse Way now." And my daughter said, "Oh, there's been talk of headless horsemen down here." So we all laughed and said we'd keep our eyes open for him.
Right.
Which is quite a coincidence. But then as soon as we turned the corner, there in front of us were some lights flashing away. They were half a mile away from the junction where we turned. And there was mainly red lights with a bit of white mingled in. And they were flashing away by the side of the road like the most amazing colours, the density of them, like a laser show, like a firework display. It was incredible to see. And we were all going, what on earth is that? It's too low for an aeroplane and too many lights for a helicopter, and there's nothing on the Fosse Way. It's always just pitch black, no street lights, no nothing. So we were talking about it, and we drove towards them, exactly half a mile away. And then we more or less drove underneath them. We stopped the car, and they were 100 feet away. Now, I always say this to people. I steer my friend's boat on the Ashby Canal here in the UK. It's a 70-foot long narrowboat.
Okay.
So when I say these lights are 100 feet away, I mean 100 feet. I could have hit them with a cricket ball. They were that close.
Wow.
We stopped the car, and we were staring at these lights. And they were just hovering over this field next to the road by the gateway. And like I say, 100 feet away, maybe only as much as 50 feet off the ground. And like we just stared at them. Now, at the back, there was no craft at the moment. There was just lights, nothing but lights. And on the rear, which turned out to be the rear, there was 4 big red lights. And they weren't parallel to the earth. They were like tilted at an angle of 30 degrees.
Okay.
And as I stared at the lights, I stared at the 4th one, the highest one. And that got like a crisscross effect as I stared at the light coming out of it. Now, I think the crisscross effect, like a grid work over the light, was an effect from the light itself, something along the lines of Newton's law of ring interference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was manufactured onto the actual surround of the light, like a traffic light lens. It was big like a big traffic light lens, but I believe the light was causing the crisscross pattern, which I thought was pretty amazing. So as I'm staring at this light, all of a sudden, the sky starts to ripple around the lights. And I thought to myself, my word, it's not just lights. There's something there as well. There's something that's like invisible around the lights. And as soon as I thought that, it decloaked in an instant, just like Star Trek. You know when the Klingons decloak their ship?
Yes.
It was just like that.
That's what I was just thinking. I was just thinking that, like the Klingons, like when you see that shimmer.
Absolutely, yes. There was a slight shimmer around the outside edge, and then it just decloaked straight away and became this solid metallic object. So we're looking at the rear end of it, what happened then? The nose floated up in the air, but it tilted from the rear of the craft. The craft was that low, if it had tilted from the middle, it would have struck the ground. So the rear end stayed where it was, and the nose floated up like a stallion rearing up at you. But by doing that, it showed us the top surface of the craft, not the bottom, which is important because not many people get to see the top of a triangle because we're always looking up and seeing the underneath of the triangles.
Right, right.
But we were observing the top of it. Now that it was triangular in shape as it floated up, and the way it moved, the way it floated, was incredible. It was like a submarine underwater. It didn't float. It didn't move like a Harrier jump jet, for instance. It floated like a submarine. And as the nose floated up in the air, the surface looked like it was alive. It looked like liquid was flowing up and down the surface with little waves on it. I always say it looks like a lake at night with the moonlight shining on it, with a slight ripple on the lake where it's catching the top of the waves. It looked like that on the surface.
Incredible.
Now, on top of that, there were silver beams that were interlocking like a maze in an old-fashioned English garden. But they weren't shimmering, they were solid, so it was definitely liquid that was underneath the beams and not an effect from like electromagnetism or a heat haze or anything along those lines. It was a definite liquid running up and down the surface with these beams interlocking on top. And as it rose up and you looked at it, it looked to me like it was alive, like it was organic. However, it was clearly manufactured because of the beams interlocking on top and the triangular shape of it. And three thoughts came into my mind straight away. The first one was, my God, aliens exist.
Yeah,
the second one was abductions must take place. And the third one was this explains mysteries that we've got in history, because I've got the feeling that these things have been around all the time. So me, my wife and my mother-in-law were staring at this craft that's just materialised in front of us and floated up. But my wife's been a bit more sensible. She decides, because there's a gateway just by where we've stopped, she decides to pull forward on this road, even though there's no traffic, and reverse into the gateway so we can get out rather than getting out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But the trouble with that was, as soon as she pulled forward, there was a large hedge and it blocked the view. And I thought to myself, if it's going to go, it's going to go now. So she reversed the car into the gateway, we jumped out, sure enough, it had gone. Just like that, in that split second, it disappeared. But there was no smell of any fuel, aviation fuel or anything along those lines. There was no sound at all, actually. It was like really quiet. You could hear a pin drop. But in the distance, there was this large craft going away from us with four big red lights on the back. And I said, there it is. Look, it's changed shape. It's massive. It's like the size of a football pitch now. Whereas the one we first came across was like the size of a house. And we stood there and looked at it going away. And the girls say, oh, no, that's probably a normal airplane. I'm going, no, you don't get four big red lights on the back of normal craft. And look at the size of it.
Right.
So then we got back into the car and drove home. And after a little while, we're standing there. After a while, I think air traffic started up again and cars started coming up and down the road. But for that moment, when we had the sighting, there was nothing around at all whatsoever. So we get back in the car, go home, take the mother-in-law home. Lo and behold, there's the Range Rover with my brother-in-law and the French people. It's already there before us. Plus, they've got out of the car and they're sitting inside the house. That didn't seem quite right, because if they couldn't have been that far behind us, so they should have seen the triangle.
Right, I was just going to ask that. You would think that they should have been close enough to see what you guys were seeing.
That's right, but they didn't see anything, and they didn't even see us either. They said they were trying to catch us up, but they never saw us. There is a possibility we was in the gateway when they come past, but we had the hazard flashes on, so I assumed they would have seen us. It was only just off the road.
Right. That's strange, Colin. Oh, my God.
Yeah, so like I say, as soon as I got back, using all my skills that I've got for working offshore to make notes of things, I drew it straight away before I started losing any details of what I've seen. Now, there's a bit more to it than that, and we'll come back to that in a bit if you don't mind.
Sure, definitely. I'm fascinated. So, yeah, go ahead.
So what happened next was, we drew some pictures, me and my daughter. My wife didn't see the craft materialise. She only saw the light, so she couldn't draw the craft. My mother-in-law, she couldn't really draw, but she described it as a triangle with girders. She called them girders on the surface, these beams, interlocking beams.
Okay.
So I did some sketches, and then at this point in time, actually, I was working from home. I'd started my own business, and I got 3 people working for me. We was doing an embroidery design business, which was great. It was perfect because I couldn't concentrate on work. So I got the staff to run the business whilst I was starting to make some models. First, I started drawing it. I drew it in CorelDRAW and printed those out and made some paper models. They were quite exciting and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in the meantime, I'd got in touch with a UFO magazine. Like I said, I'd never been involved with UFOs before, so this was my first foray into that world.
Wow.
And they put me in touch with a guy called Omar Fowler, who was a great researcher here in the UK. He's passed away now, bless him, but we became good friends over the years. He actually came over and interviewed us, but he also gave me one of his manuscripts that he'd written. And inside there was a triangle from Belgium in the 90s that flew over somebody's head, and they made a sketch of the underneath, and it's got these beams interlocking on the surface that are raised off the surface in relief, the same as the beams on the top of our craft. So when I seen that, I thought, wow, that's either the same triangle that we've seen or the same sort of series of triangles we've seen. So what I decided to do then was to copy the sighting from Belgium, their drawing, and reproduce that, to put it with my drawings, my own observations of the rear and the top of the craft. We never got to see the bottom of the craft. So I'm assuming it was the same as the one that was seen in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only assuming, I'm sort of extrapolating that information. It may well have just been flat black, I don't know. We didn't get to see much of the bottom. So what I did then, I decided to build a model, a proper 3D model. And I got some doweling and some plywood, built a framework, and then I glued the drawings from CorelDRAW onto the surface of this, which was pretty good. You know, it was not bad.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an idea of what you're dealing with, that's for sure.
That's right, and it makes it far more tangible. But what happened then was I'd got a little van that I was using for my business. We were starting to sell a few polo shirts as well as doing embroidery, so I bought a little delivery van. And the last time I saw the model, it was inside the van. Now, well, the van got broken into one night on the driveway. And the only thing they stole was a cassette player, which was worth nothing. I mean, we were playing CDs in them days. It was just, it was unbelievable. They even stole it. But when I took my vehicle to be repaired to a friend of mine, he said it had been professionally broken into, and he couldn't understand why somebody would spend that time doing that. Well, you know, just to get a small cassette player. And I couldn't understand it either. But then when I come to look for my model, I couldn't find it. And I know it was in the van the last time I seen it. So whoever took the cassette player also took the model. And I never did see it again. I've moved home a couple of times since then. It's never ever turned up. That model went at the same time as the cassette player went, which was a bit spooky, especially as it was taken off the driveway of my house.
That is strange. Wow.
So in a way, that was a godsend, because what I did next was build another model. So this time I did the same again. I got some plywood and some doweling, built the framework, and printed the drawings off CorelDRAW and glued those onto the framework. But this time I went and bought some flashing LEDs and a battery pack and a switch, and I drilled some holes and wired it all up. And it was great, you know, switch it on and it would all be flashing away. It would make me physically shake to look at it. It would take me back to that night. Every time I
imagine, right?
I kept it in the briefcase, and every time I took it out, I'd get so excited and start to shake and think, wow, you know, I can't believe what I've seen. Unbelievable. So with that model, you know, I started to do a few television shows and a couple of presentations. And then I decided to leave it for a while and just research on the internet, just talk to people, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it keeps coming back, you know. I've tried to stop getting involved with the UFO stuff, but it just kept coming back. I can't help it. It's so interesting and so amazing, and you meet some amazing people along the way who have had some incredible experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happened next was, out of the blue, a friend of mine, John Mills, his name is, he came to see me, and he said he bought himself a 3D printer, and as a little project he wanted to print my UFO. with the beams on the surface, which is great because although I've got a good wooden model that I built myself, the
Mm-hmm.
beams were not raised up off the surface. And that's an important feature of the craft as far as I was concerned. So John said he would build me a little model with the beams off the surface, and he put lights in it on the rear, underneath, and the white light in the centre. And that was great, really, really good. I was amazed, and it took him a bit of time, cost him a few pounds as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't want paying for it. He just did it out of friendship. So I came up with the idea that now he's got all the print files. If he was to print a few off and I was to sell them for him on eBay, for instance, if we sold enough, could he build me a larger model, but with the full colour, with a liquid surface and silver beams? The small model he made was just black, and the beams were black. So although it was a pretty accurate model, it was still not 100% there.
Right.
So John agreed. So I started selling these little triangles on eBay. Plus, he printed a flying saucer, and I sold some of those as well. And eventually, we sold enough, and he decided he could build me the larger model. So that's what I've ended up with today. You'll see that on Facebook and floating around the internet now. It's about an A4 size. The surface looks like liquid. It's got this fantastic paint finish on it. It's a grey liquid. And on top of that, we've got silver beams interlocking on the surface. Then underneath, we've got silver beams coming off the surface again, and the lights in the corners and the centre. I mean, this is as close as you're going to get to what we saw on that night.
Wow. That's fascinating. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is actually. It's been quite a roller coaster journey. It's been 24 years now.
Definitely,
So,
yeah. Yeah, like that's a long time to really think about this and work on it and work on your model. I think that's amazing that you're actually able to make such a close replica of what you saw. That's fascinating to me.
also, when you have an experience like this, I think it just sticks with you. It's in my mind. It's like it happened yesterday. I can still
Yep.
see it. I can still see every detail of it as if it just happened. It
Yep.
doesn't feel like it was 24 years ago.
Yep, that's the same thing as I was saying at the beginning, Colin, that about my mom. Like she was just down for a visit, and I had her tell because I've been doing a few shows on UFOs lately and talking about it, and I wanted her to tell the story again that she told me when I was younger, because memory's not the greatest. You just kind of forget details, so I wanted her to tell it in her words. And as I was saying, you could visibly see the goosebumps on her hands, on her arms, and like her just get really quiet. Like it was like she was there again, and she was so uncomfortable talking about it. And she was 13, 12 or 13, she thinks, when it happened, and she's like 78 now. So that's how long this has stuck with her.
Gosh,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
that is a long time. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I think something more must have occurred there rather than just a sighting. But she never told you all of the details.
Yeah, she did. Like what she can remember. Like she definitely told me about how there was this noise that she was in the house. She was home alone with the dog, her dog, and this noise came over. This humming noise. So she saw it, and then she went outside, and there was this bright like dome of light around their yard. So it was just this dome of light and this droning noise that she heard, and she got so scared, and the dog ended up taking off, hiding under the deck, like under the porch, went and hid and was shaking. She said she ran and dove under a tree, this big tree that was in their yard, and covered herself up like in a fetal position because she was so scared. And she said it was just this piercing sound in her head that she heard, this droning sound and this really, really bright light. And she doesn't. And I said, well, do you remember how long you were there? Like, was there missing time or anything like that? And she said she can't really remember, but she does remember the neighbors. They went to the neighbors. Cause she ended up telling her mom when she came home what happened. And then they went to the neighbors, and they were asking if the neighbors saw this light or heard anything. And the neighbors said it was pitch black. They didn't hear anything. So they weren't sure what she was talking about. But she said it scared her that bad. Like she's never felt fear, like she said, like that in her life. And but it's so long ago. She's like, I can't remember if there was missing time. I just remember getting up off the ground, running in the house, and then hiding under, like basically on the bed with the blankets over her till her mom got home.
Blimey, yeah, she's quite an experience there, isn't she?
Yeah, and she said the dog was shaking like the whole night, like the dog was petrified, didn't want to come out from under the deck. And so when she tells that story, Colin, it just you can see how scared she is. Like, and I'm on the lines of like something more happened that she can't remember.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's a shame, isn't it? Because when it comes to our sighting, I had nothing but excitement and pleasure. It felt amazing. It felt like I was meeting God, even though I'm not a religious person. I'm
Hmm.
still not. But it was fantastic. The sort of feeling when I seen it materialize and float up in front of us. It was almost like a feeling of love. Like it was nothing frightening about it at all.
Wow, and no missing, no like I'm glad that we kind of talked about missing time. Did you think to check for missing time? Was there missing time? Because I find the only reason I asked that is because the company that you were with, as you said just earlier, they didn't even see you on the road. They were home before you. That to me that seems strange.
It does, yeah. Now, the only thing is, we don't know exact time that we left the pub. We know after the event, we looked at the watch and it was 9:50, but we don't know what time we left the public house. It's a shame I didn't think to go back and see what time we paid the bill. That would have been interesting.
That's true.
We could have worked out whether there was any missing time or not. But I obviously didn't bring it to mind at that point until we got back. Um, yeah, so going back to the model, once John had built this big model, I decided I'd go and do a presentation. I've not done one for years. So I went to a conference here in the UK last year and I met a couple of guys there, the Kinsella twins, Ronnie and Philip.
Mm-hmm.
I was chatting to them. Ronnie had his own experience with a triangle, and I was chatting with Philip, and he suggested that I write a book. Now, I had thought years ago about perhaps writing a book about my experience, but I didn't think it'd be enough to fill a book. But it certainly gave me the impetus. So when I came back from the conference, I thought, I'm going to write a book.
Well,
So
I would too.
I decided to sit down and do it. What I had to do then was I basically wrote about my experience. And also, I'd done a few articles in local newspapers, the Hinkley Times, and a lot of people got in touch from that, about a dozen people, and they'd all seen triangles, which is quite amazing. There was no saucers or cigars, they were all triangular shaped craft that had been seen, and some of them were in the same location as well, over antennae in the town centre. And then over the last 24 years, I've obviously spoken to a lot of people and collected a lot of emails, a lot of messages from social media. So I decided to go back through all of those and collect lots of other sightings as well. Because once I'd done my own sighting, I don't think I'd only got up to about 10,000 words, and I really needed about 70,000 words for a
Right.
book.
Right.
So I had to drag in a lot of other people's sightings to fill the book. So this is where the book came from. It didn't take that long, I guess, to write it. It took 24 years to get the information together.
Yeah.
It didn't take
Exactly.
quite so long to write the book. So at this point, I think it's good to diversify a little bit and talk about something else that occurred on the night.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm
Let's,
really fascinated, Colin. So yes, the floor is yours.
okay, so for the first 20 years of this, I only ever talked about the nuts and bolts, the same as I've just talked about now. Nuts and bolts, it's a close encounter and it's fantastic. However, what I didn't talk about was the bit of strangeness that occurred. So basically, this is what happened. When the craft floated up in front of me, like a submarine underwater, all of a sudden, it was like somebody got a pair of binoculars and put them in front of my eyes because I could see the surface close up. I could see the beams interlocking right in front of me. Then there was another view of the nose, the top nose, the one that had risen up in the air. And I remember thinking how spherical it was, how fantastically manufactured it had become. And then there was another view, which was the central core of the craft. There's like a white central core that runs around the craft, and the top and the bottom join onto this central core, and the top and the bottom roll over like a hovercraft skin, or like the pie on the edge of a pastry. But where it joins the central white core, there was no welding, no nuts and bolts, no rivets, nothing along those lines at all. And then I remember saying, "Let's get out of the car. I want to get on board." And my mother-in-law wanted to get on board as well. And this is when my wife drove forward and blocked the view.
Okay.
So the next day, I'm thinking about these close views, and I talked to the family about it, and I said, I think I've had an out of body experience because I got close to the craft and I could see the detail. And one of those details, actually, the side view where the top and the bottom roll onto the central white core, we would not have been able to have seen that from where we were sitting on the road. So obviously something peculiar happened for me to get that view. And without that view, I would not have been able to build the model. So I went along with this idea that I'd had an out of body experience. And I went along with that for quite a few years, actually. But what started to happen next, in fact, the very next day, we started to have some electrical problems at home with a television, a video recorder, a clock on an electric cooker, a kettle, hard drive on a computer. All these things played up and caused problems. And somebody suggested once, actually, that maybe they followed us back and scanned the house to see what we were doing. And maybe that was the interference from the scanning produced all this electrical effect. I don't know, but this was just the start of things. This was just the very next day.
Wow.
And then over the next 18 months, I started to have paranormal experiences. I mean, I'm a nuts and bolts engineer. I mean, this was freaking me out. I just couldn't believe it. It was a paradigm shift in your way of thinking.
I can
And
imagine,
everything I
for
knew
sure.
had just been thrown out the window.
Right.
So I'll tell you about one of the experiences. They're all in the book. I started putting dates down about what was happening. This one was about 18 months after the UFO event. I'm fishing in a river called the River Soar at Rothley in Leicestershire, here in the UK, and I'm having a great time. I'm actually standing in the river in my waders, fishing away, and I hear what sounds like two people or four heavy footsteps coming across the field towards me. So in the past, there had been farmhands down there shooting, so I decided to go up the bank and make myself known. I don't want them shooting in my direction, and just say hello, basically. So I climbed up the riverbank. Got to the top, and there's no one there, but the noise is continuing. So I've got four footsteps coming across this field towards me, and it's getting louder and louder. And I'm now starting to get petrified. This is the only time in all of this that I've ever been frightened, to be honest. I decided it was going to be a big cat, because I don't always jump to paranormal straight, because I've never been into it before, if you know what I mean. I always look for logical answers first.
Right.
So this thing's coming across the field, and I decided it's going to be a big cat. So I get a spike out of my rod hold to protect myself. And I figure if it is a cat, I'm going to go back down the riverbank and get it to jump on me and try and impale it on its own weight. That was my game plan. It's amazing how quick your brain thinks in a situation like that.
I can
don't know
imagine,
if it would have worked, but that was my game plan. But anyway, this thing, whatever it was, it walked from left to right in front of me, really close, like 6 foot away. And then it started to fade away to the right. So I started shouting, and I got this metal pole and started hitting the grass to see if there was anything there, but obviously nothing came out. And I stood there and I thought, that was not here. That is not a cat. Cats don't make big noise.
Right.
Whatever that was is some sort of a ghost or from somewhere else. It's like some sort of space-time contingency, something that's not really here but is here that you can hear. And that was the day, Rick, that I decided it had to be, that the UFO had to be dimensional rather than extraterrestrial. The reason being that prior to the UFO event, I'd had no paranormal experiences whatsoever that I can remember. But after the UFO event, I've had quite a few. Like I say, I've listed them all in the book.
Perfect.
So they're obviously connected. And that day down at the river, and I stood there, and once I realised what had gone on, I relaxed. I felt a lot better about it, stopped shaking. And I decided then, definitely, this craft had to be dimensional. And it's somehow left some sort of a residue with me, which is why I'm seeing these other things. If it was extraterrestrial, it would have just disappeared, and that would have been the end of it. Would never had any more experiences. Right. So I am convinced that these craft are actually interdimensional.
I've also thought that for a long time too. I kind of bounce back and forth because I hear so many different stories, and I'm like, okay, is it interdimensional? Maybe it's both. Maybe we're dealing with something that's both. I don't know, because I haven't had this experience, but it definitely sounds like you said. I think you summed it up great, Colin. That you kind of had this residue that left over. What I wanted to ask you is because you described that the only way you could see parts of this craft is that you would have had to be out of your body, because there was no way that you could see it. Did you have any sensation of leaving your body? Did you look down and see your body, or is this just something that you kind of put together after the event?
It was something I put together after the event. It's something I invented myself, and for
Wow.
quite a long
Okay.
time I thought that's what happened. However, I believe I've got an answer to it.
Okay.
So, back in the early days, we had a UFO magazine here, and they used to produce some conferences in Leeds. They were Graham Birdsall and Russell Callahan used to put these conferences on, and they were fantastic. They got really big until Graham passed away, and then the UFO magazine and the conferences unfortunately died a death with Graham.
Oh.
But at these conferences, I met Stanton Freeman, Dr. Roger Lear,
Oh.
Stephen Greer,
Wow.
but more importantly, I met Bud Hopkins, and I had a brief conversation with Bud. He was talking to people. There was a queue of people wanting to see him. I got the model with me as well, the one with the flashing lights in that I
No
made out.
doubt. Yeah, I've read Bud's books, and yeah, and it's amazing you got to meet him.
Yes, so I got to meet Bob and I got 30 seconds with him. I told him what I've just told you about the close viewing and the three views, and I'd had this out of body experience during the close encounter. And Bud says to me, no, that wasn't an out of body experience. They were images placed in your mind by the aliens on board the craft. Now, before he
Okay.
got a chance to expand on that, this woman behind me butted in. She got a crystal she found in the forest, and she said, "Oh, Bob, I found this where there was a UFO." And that was the end of my 30 seconds. I mean, Bob started chatting to her, and I moved on. So I thought that's a bit odd, having images placed in my mind, because this is still in a few years after the event.
Right.
Over the last 24 years, I have changed my mind slightly. Um, because what happened then, when John made the first model, the first 3D printed model that was just all black, I did do a presentation with that at the Birmingham UFO group. Now, the leader of that group, Dave Holdren, said to me that, because I talked about the close viewing, the out of body experience, and Dave said he'd got a similar case where a couple of guys had seen a UFO land in a field quite a distance away, and they were leaning on the gate watching it, and they'd seen the aliens come out of the craft. And then one of them said, all of a sudden, an alien's face was right in front of him, telling him he shouldn't be there. It's like he'd telepathy,
Right.
somehow telepathically got his face to travel across the field. Well, I thought that was interesting. I didn't think it was exactly the same as what had happened to me, but maybe something along the same lines. I wasn't quite sure.
Right.
And then within 2 weeks of that, as a coincidence, out of the blue, I get an email from America from a guy in Connecticut who's never spoke to anybody at all about his experience. He didn't want to. He wanted to keep it quiet.
Yeah, a lot of people are in that camp.
But he'd been looking on the internet and he found one of my interviews where I was talking about the close view and the out of body stuff. And basically, his email started off by saying, "Just like you, I had three images placed in my mind during a close encounter with a triangle." He says the first one was like some of the pipe work on the outside. The other one, second view was like a ball of light, like plasma or something. And he thinks the third view was possibly inside the craft.
Oh, interesting.
So just prior to that, for the last couple of years, I've been listening to all of David Jacobs' work that he's done with abductees.
Mm-hmm.
What's coming across on that and lots of other researchers is telepathy. They talk about telepathy all the time. Now, what David Jacobs was saying, that some of his abductees were saying that images are placed into your mind rather than words, because, a picture paints 1,000 words, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I always thought in my naivety that telepathy was like a conversation in words going backwards and forwards without moving your lips, but it could also be images rather than words. And it was like a eureka moment when I got this email saying, just like you, I had three images placed in my mind. I suddenly realised that Bud Hopkins was right. That's what took place. And that made more sense then, because from the nose to the side view, I didn't see it roll. I didn't see the craft move. It was three separate images with nothing in between. So that would make more sense for telepathy than it would do with an out-of-body experience, because if you was out of your body, you'd see the craft moving around in front of you. But with three images placed in the mind, then that's all you see.
It's like three snapshots they gave you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It's almost like three's the lucky number, because like when the craft floated up in front of me, there were three distinct thoughts. First one, aliens exist. Second one was abductions take place. And the third one was this explains mysteries from history.
Yep.
And then when it came to the telepathy, but we still got to keep an open mind because we don't know. It's all the science we don't yet understand. But when it comes to the telepathy, there was three images placed in my mind. When the guy in America got in touch with me and talked about his telepathic images, same again, he had three images. It seems to be like, whether that's just coincidence or not, I don't know. But it was like a eureka moment. I decided that Bud was definitely right, and I'd had these three images placed in my mind, which also would then explain why the other three occupants of the car, my wife, my daughter, and my mother-in-law, were not having any other experiences. They were not seeing any other UFOs at distance or having any other experiences at the riverbank. It was only happening to me. And I believe that now is because they did do some telepathy, and it's opened up something in my brain to allow these things to come through.
Very interesting. So you were the only one that saw the angles that you did.
The close images, yes.
Very interesting. And I was going to ask you that too about the people in the car. Like, did they have the same? Did they get images too, or was it just you? So I'm glad that you answered that, Colin. And that's really fascinating. That's so fascinating what you're saying. And I wonder about. I've looked into telepathy, and I've definitely over the years I've heard a lot about it. And you bring up a great point, because I think a lot of people do think that about telepathy, that you're going to hear voices going back and forth and your lips aren't moving, but you're having this conversation mentally. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's more effective with pictures, I would think.
Yes, yeah, I would say so.
Very interesting. Wow,
Spent
that's
all my life doing pictures, and I'm still doing it now. I'm
yeah.
drawing every day for a living, and always have done. So it made a lot of sense that they would put images in my mind and not the others. And I'm the one who's gone and made the craft, the exact model. I'm the one who's ended up writing a book.
That's a
Now, I
good
do
point.
believe that it wasn't accidental. I believe they were waiting for us. I believe it was almost like a bit of an ambush. I say that because a couple of things I think I might have figured out. But again, we have to put these in parentheses because we don't really know all the truth. I mean, for
Very
20
true.
years, I thought I'd had an out-of-body experience, but then for the last 4 years, I think it was telepathy. It might turn out to be something else. Yeah, we
Right.
don't know.
At least you're open to the ideas. I love that about our conversation. You're not just stuck in your one belief. You're willing to listen and change your thoughts. I think that's amazing. I really do.
Yes, yeah. Another odd thing was like the next day when I went back to measure the distance from where we turned the corner to where we saw the lights, I failed to see how we could have seen it because there were trees in the way and bushes and hedges and things on the approach to it. But we did see it as soon as we turned the corner. Now, my wife went to pick a friend up from the airport and came back along that way to show where we'd seen for her the lights. And when she came home, she said the same thing. She said, it looks like the scenery was different that night because I don't see how we could have seen it from driving up the road. So she had the same thoughts that I had.
Right.
So again, is this like going back to the dimensional thing? Did we get caught up in another dimension for a little while as this thing was landing? Was arriving, was decloaking. Now the reason I say I think it might have been an ambush is because I've been trying to figure out for 24 years why the craft was at an angle to the Earth, why it was tilted up at 30 degrees and not flat with the Earth.
Good. Yeah. Good question.
Well, I've come up with an answer. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know. But you have to bear in mind that the craft was invisible. But as we approached the craft from half a mile away, because it was at 30 degrees angle, it was tipped up towards us. So that would either A, give us a better view of all of the lights, or B, give them a better view of us coming up the road. But I believe it was tilted at an angle for our benefit. It was intentional.
Okay. I see.
Where there's intent, there's purpose.
Absolutely.
Now, I asked my wife to draw what she's seen, and she drew 3 red lights in a perfect triangle. No way could we have seen that from the approach, and we wouldn't have known it was a triangle until it materialised in front of us. Now, a couple of months later, I asked her to draw again what she saw, and again she drew 3 red lights in a perfect equilateral triangle. So I came up with a theory, and it's just a theory, that the small craft in the field was waiting for us. That was the bait. and it tilted itself up to expose all the lights and make it look absolutely incredible, so you wouldn't take your eyes off it.
Right.
At the same time, that large craft we seen afterwards could possibly have been passing over the car. What my wife saw was the underneath of the mothership with three red lights in the corner.
Right.
Because by the time we got out of the car, the trajectory of where the large craft was would seem about right for it coming over the top of us as we were stopped looking at the small one in the field. I've even got a picture of it somewhere in the book, I think. But that's only a sort of guesswork. That may have occurred. I don't know. But it
That
was definitely intentional. It was definitely waiting for us. And there has to be a reason for that.
I agree, and it's funny that you bring that up, Colin, because I was thinking that when you were telling your story, I was like, because you were describing the three lights that were going away in the distance, and I'm like, I wonder if that was like a mothership or like a base ship, and then you guys kind of caught like a scout ship or I don't know, like a maybe like you were describing. I think it was kind of like you're dealing with two separate ships.
Yes, yeah, I think it was a mothership. And initially, because I didn't know anything about UFOs, when I did my report a couple of days later with Omar Fowler, I put that I thought the small craft had morphed into a larger one. But like afterwards, once I started doing a bit of research, I realised that wasn't the case. That what we saw was what we call a mothership. It was one of these football pitch sized craft, and one
Wow.
assumes that the little craft must have gone back to it, but we don't know because we didn't see it actually disappear. So yeah, I do believe that was a mothership that possibly the small one went back to, but it could have come over the car at the same time as we were all staring at the little one in the
Right.
field.
So
But
that's fascinating. Like that, what an incredible story, Colin. I'm so excited for your book because I think this is going to really help people. Because as you said, over the years, you've had a lot of people reach out to you because the people all around the world are seeing these triangle ships, and it's becoming more and more common for people to describe these ships. And with the red lights underneath, I think of the Phoenix lights, where so many people saw that. Did you after this encounter? I know what I would have done. I would have been researching triangle ships to death. I would have been looking for anything I could find on triangle UFOs and what people are seeing. Did you do that? Like like
I did, yeah, I did exactly that. I didn't look into sources or cigars. I mean, you come across them occasionally, but my total interest in being absorbed in the subject is to do with triangles,
right.
which is why I've wrote the book Triangular UFOs of the United Kingdom. And I also decided to stick to the United Kingdom because it's tangible. It's where I live. It all makes more
It
sense.
does. Yep.
Now,
Yep.
what happened with the book? I've got 130 different close encounters in the book from people
Holy,
in the UK.
incredible.
And now, amongst that, one of the things I'll say is that no two craft are exactly the same. So before anybody starts talking about TR3Bs, you need to realise that in any manufacturing process, you're not going to keep changing the shape and the manufacturing
Right.
spec of every craft that you make because you need to have maintenance teams to keep them flying. You need spare parts. Now, I've only scratched the surface here in the UK. 130 cases, there's got to be thousands. And worldwide, there must be thousands and thousands of UFO cases and different types of UFOs. So they're not secret military projects. There may be one or two mingled in there, but you wouldn't fly a secret craft as well, over populated areas around the world. Belgium, UK, they're everywhere.
And are they going back from your research? How far are triangles? Have they been going back all the way to the early sightings of saucers? Are they kind of in there, or has there been a progress? Like I just wonder if there's been like a progression of like the cigar ones, and then you hear a lot of people seeing those. Then you see the saucers, and now it seems that we're into this triangle UFO. Or are they kind of all blended together from the research you've done?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really done enough research on cigars and saucers to be able to answer that correctly because
Fair
all I've
enough.
really concentrated on is the triangular UFOs. But there do seem to have been more recent sightings rather
Right.
than old ones. Although in the book, the oldest report I've got is from 1956 here in the UK.
Wow. That's
But
okay.
the oldest report I've ever come across was in 1561 in Nuremberg. That's 462 years ago, where there was a battle in the sky. It's all been written down in history.
Right.
You can find it you can Google it and have a look. Nuremberg, 1561. And at the end of the battle between the saucers and cigars, and that, this large black triangle came in. But that's all been recorded. That's, like I say, 1561.
It's a
a
long
whole
time
time
ago.
ago.
Yeah, like I remember
That
I learned about that too. I've heard that story that you're talking about. Fascinating.
yes, yeah. Now, what else is fascinating is the way people's perception and what people are talking about with these triangles has changed over the years. Like I say, 20 years ago, I just talked about the nuts and bolts, but
Mm-hmm.
now I talk about the weird stuff that's took place. And a lot more people are starting to do that. So when I was gathering reports for the book, I was asking people, have you had any other UFO sightings or paranormal experiences? And, more people saying yes than no. So I've dedicated a whole chapter of the book to UFOs and the paranormal because so many people have grown up seeing ghosts and having strange
Yep.
experiences, and it culminates in a close encounter with a UFO. For me, strangely, it was the other way around. I seen the UFO first, and then had paranormal experiences afterwards. Most people seem to have experiences prior to seeing a UFO,
Right.
but there's definitely a connection between the UFO and the paranormal. It's there all the time, which again is, I think, is another pointer towards dimensions. Dimensional craft rather than.
Oh, hopefully we didn't lose you. Oh no. Oh, okay, Doug. Oh, we're reconnecting, guys. Hold on there. Hopefully we'll get Colin back here. Sorry, God, I hope we get you back, Colin, because this is so fascinating. And I just really want to make sure that we wrap this interview up. I want to give you a chance to definitely let people know where they can get your book and definitely can get it on audiobook. It's all on Amazon, guys. I'm going to make sure that I leave links to let you guys know where to get that. I may have to go ahead and get Colin back on here. Just give me 1 second here, guys. What a fascinating story. This has happened the odd time during an interview, but no big deal. We can figure it all out. I can try to give him a call back here and hopefully, or we can reconnect her. I'm going to give it another about 30 seconds just to see. But wow, guys, what do you think? Incredible story that Colin is talking about. The book, incredible. And the fact that you can go and Google and check out his models is fascinating. It really is. So, let me just go ahead and see if we can get him back just to wrap up this interview here, because I definitely want to make sure, definitely want him to let everyone know where they can get his book and how to get it, because I mean, I'm fascinated with this subject, and I really do think that Colin is onto something by the interdimensional. I've heard so many people talk about that, and that's what they describe. But I love the way that he actually saw the shimmering along the ship. I think that is so fascinating in what we're seeing, because everybody remembers Star Trek and how, you see the Klingons. I hope most people that are watching have seen Star Trek, but you see that shimmering across the screen, and then you see the Klingon ship appear. And if that's what he saw, that's fascinating. Is that them distorting space and time and coming through? Or is it, let's be honest, is it a technology maybe that the UFOs have? Maybe it's military. Maybe they have this technology, this cloaking technology. I mean, who knows? There we go. We got Colin back. Welcome back, Colin. We got disconnected. Are you there, my friend? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, I cannot hear you.
Hello.
Hello, 1 second here. Let me see if we can go ahead here and let me just send Colin a message here. He just can't seem to hear me.
Hello.
Hello. But let me just see.
I've done it again. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, got you back.
Ah, perfect. I was just typing you to let you know. Yeah, that happens sometimes that we get disconnected. Skype has got its moments, does it not?
It does, yeah. I get problems with it all the time. Can you still hear me okay?
Oh, I can still hear you perfect. And I just kept the show going. I just kept chatting away. I knew that I've had this happen before, so I'm just like, all right, keep the show going, and I can just we'll get him back on.
Yeah.
No worries. It's just great to
Yeah.
have you back.
I was at the point I was just about to say we were on about the paranormal stuff.
Right. Yes.
Just recently, there's a program on Blaze on the TV here in the UK, and for the first time, they started talking about people who have UFO encounters go on to have these other encounters, these other
Mm-hmm.
paranormal effects. And they've even got a name for it. They call it the hitchhiker effect. Now, I've never heard of that before, but
Neither have I, to be honest.
obviously it's now starting to become more mainstream that UFOs and the paranormal are intertwined, that they are connected. I think people are starting to see that now.
Wow, the hitchhiker. I have to look. I'm writing. I'm going to write this down.
Yeah, hitchhiker effect.
Hitchhiker effect. I'm fascinated to look into that, and it does make a lot of sense. I was saying when we got disconnected there, Colin, for a second, that the more research I'm doing into it, I really think you're onto something with this dimensional. That's what they're coming through. To me, that makes more sense than them traveling these great, humongous distances from distant planets. I just think a technology that you witnessed that night, and I just, for me, if a species is that advanced, I would think that they would have a way to kind of, like you said, kind of go through inner like dimensions. Whether they're coming, who knows what dimensions they're coming from, but I really do think you're onto something, especially with that shimmering effect. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes that night,
Yeah,
seeing that. Like you're just sitting there, you see these lights, and then you see a crafty cloak in
and
front of
then
you,
float up in front of you as well.
float up
The
in
way it
front of you.
moves, it's incredible.
No sound, right? Nothing.
No sound over the noise of the car. I mean, if we'd have got out of
Wow.
the car, maybe there would have been a low humming sign. But from where we were, there was no sound whatsoever, totally silent.
Incredible, incredible. Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm definitely gonna make sure that I people check out the go and search for the images of Colin's models. Make sure you get his book. I'm gonna make sure that I leave links in the description so you guys can go and order his book. It's on audiobook. He let me know, which is that's what I'm gonna go get because I have a hell of a time reading anything on a screen. That's a book. I just migraines come within 10 minutes, so I'm like I need audiobook or the physical. But definitely a fascinating story, Colin. I mean, wow. I mean, I just, and it's amazing that over all of these years, you've kept doing the research, you've working on these models, and to have a model that's so close to what you saw and other people are
Yeah,
seeing is incredible.
yeah, it's all been for my own benefit initially. It wasn't, I didn't sort of start out with the idea one day I'm going to write a book and I'm going to do all these presentations. It just happened. It just
Right.
sort of grew along the way. Now, one of the interesting things, I mean, if anybody out there has had an experience with a triangle, I would say by buying the book, not because I want to sell you the book, you'll take a lot of comfort from it. You'll find a lot of information in there that will make you more comfortable with your own sighting and realise you're not alone.
Right.
That's happened to me as well. I mean, I'm collecting all this information together. I decided to have a quick look through the book and come up with some common factors. I'll just run through those if you don't
Okay.
mind.
I would love to hear them.
So, for instance, I would have thought that most triangles are either grey or black. That's what most people report.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 130 sightings I've got in my book, we've got a collection of grey and black. It does come up quite a lot, but there's also orange, silver, gold, white, blue, dark brown, and green triangles being observed. And the lights can vary between red and white. That's the normal sort of lighting. But there's also been seen with green, blue, yellow, orange, bronze, purple, and pink. And the noise as well. The common factor on the noise is a dull humming sound, a low hum, like a transformer,
Yeah.
like a power station transformer, buzzing or droning. Somebody described it as sucking like a vacuum cleaner. And the sizes all vary from quite small triangles to football pitch size triangles. Quite often, there's people talk about pipes on the surface like a fridge running around them. I've got my ideas on that as well, actually. Some people have said when the craft is really close, they can feel pressure. Some people have
Interesting.
seen it cloaking, shimmering, looking like tin foil, rippling like black tar, and some missing time in there as well. The movement's interesting. That's one of the things I learnt in the early days because our craft floated in the most peculiar way. So when I was looking on the internet on people who had seen craft, when they started saying that it floated or glided, you realise they're telling the truth because you wouldn't say that unless you've actually seen one of these moving.
Right.
One guy said that it's a bit like when you've got a sheet that you put on a bed with your partner, you've got the four corners. And as you put the sheet on, all the air's trapped in it. And then as the air comes out, the sheet comes down slowly.
Right.
That sort of movement is how the triangle was moving. I thought that was a pretty good description.
That is.
So there's quite a bit of information to be gained from the reports in there, as well as the reports themselves. You know, some are from military people, there's pilots and police, there's all sorts of people. There's even a member of parliament, the Home Secretary, Michael Howard, had a triangle over his house.
Wow, so a
So
lot of people are actually seeing these and are actually starting to talk about it. Well,
yes, it's becoming more commonplace now.
very,
Definitely.
very cool. That's so good to hear, and I mean, it's a fascinating thing. And as just to kind of to capitalize on what you're saying about the ripple effect, I actually listened to some interviews of people who have had these triangular craft go over top of them, and it's exactly what you described. It's like water. They say it's like black shimmering water is what they're seeing. So they're definitely when they're moving, they're manipulating something. Whether they're manipulating I don't know how to describe it. What they're manipulating, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
definitely
incredible, isn't
interesting.
it?
Yeah,
It's
it's
incredible. Yeah, a lot of people are describing the same things. I mean, one of the guys locally seeing a triangle come over his house, and it was half cloaked. He said he could see half the triangle and half it was invisible, which is quite an interesting observation.
that is
He said it
yeah.
was wasn't a very good cloaking device because it wasn't working very well.
Wow, yeah. And have you ran into anybody that is convinced that this is military?
Only people who haven't seen it.
Okay, well that makes sense.
That's actually. Once you see it, you know it's not military. You know it's not from this world.
Right. I
I
was
did
just
wonder as well, actually, when we were talking about craft, where they're coming from. Maybe one day we'll understand all of this science, and we'll be travelling into another dimension ourselves, no doubt. I did wonder whether you could pop out somewhere else from a dimension and be back into our dimension,
mm-hmm.
but 1,000 light years away. If that's the case, then maybe some of the aliens that we're seeing today may be using dimensions to get here. Ones that are more humanoid looking. It's
Right.
only a guess. Maybe one day we'll be able to do the same thing, but I certainly think the majority of these craft are coming from another dimension.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just think I'm on board with you. Like as I was saying earlier, I definitely think that as well, and that's just kind of where my research has been leading me. Is that it just seems more plausible that with the technology we're describing, that they would have a very convenient way of getting around, and I just don't see them just whipping through space. Not saying that that can't happen or there is some race doing that, but I just think that what a lot of people are seeing, it just kind of describes their movement of what people are seeing, how quickly they see them and they don't see them. To me, it just seems like they're kind of jumping through, like you said, through dimensions. And then I also think of Bob Lazar and when he described the craft that he worked on, and he describes it like it was like he kind of when the interview that I saw, he was talking about how this ship moved that he saw, and it kind of turns on its side and it kind of like distorts gravity and it forms its own gravity. There's some really weird stuff going on here with these ships, and I'm on your kind of same thing you are. This is not human at all.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right. Bob Lazar, I remember him saying, which I thought was interesting, good way of describing it. If you get a bowling ball and you put it onto the bed, it's just going to sit there,
yep,
a heavy bowling ball. But if you get your fist and push it down on the bed, then the bowling ball will follow where you're pushing your fist,
yep.
where you're making like the vacuum in front of it to go into. And that's how he describes the craft move, by having this vacuum in front of it that it just flies into.
Yeah, it just it made
Gets
yeah.
pulled.
That's a great description. I remember that too. I remember him
Yeah,
talking about the bowling ball, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And it just that's where the research has led me. I've looked at it for years. I've looked into the whole alien aspect of it, the abduction, and then you are correct too, Colin. That a lot of the people I speak with that have had abductions and have these encounters, they are. It seems that at least a few people I've talked to, you're right. It's kind of you went kind of backwards because the people I've talked to that have been have had these experiences, they've always had the paranormal experiences before, and then it kind of leads to the point where they see the UFO or they end up having an abduction experience or something. But you've kind of went the other way where you saw the ship and then the paranormal followed after that.
that's why. Yeah, I don't know why, but I have gone it the other way. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Interesting. And did you ever, has anything ever, like just to wrap it up, because I'm just trying to bring it full circle. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know you're busy, but I wanted to ask you because you were talking about how your model got stolen out of the van. Has anything over the years of your research, have you had any weird, like people visiting you or getting a hold of you, telling you to stay away, stop
No,
looking into this, or has that been good that way?
no. Surprisingly enough, I've had nothing at all. No contact from anybody in the government or the military or the
Hmm.
aircraft industry, which I did find it a little bit surprising and disappointing because of what I've seen. I'm sure I've got knowledge there that could be used.
Right.
Yeah, but nobody has ever contacted me either to in a positive way or a negative way. At least not
Interesting.
that I'm aware of. One or two might have chatted to me, might have been covert. I
Oh,
don't
I'm
know.
sure of that. Yeah, definitely.
But
Well,
I've had no men in black knocking on the door.
wow, it just really just the fact that your model got stolen and a cassette player, because I'm like you, like cassette player. Who wants one of those anymore? But
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
and they
yeah,
steal
that's
the
a bit
model.
strange. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much, Colin, for being here. I This was truly an interview I was excited to have. I was really excited that we could make this happen and that you were willing to come and talk about your experience and what led you to writing this book. I definitely want to let the last couple of minutes here, I want to give you a chance. Let everybody know where they can find this book, and I will make sure that I provide all the links in the description of this too, so people can get your book and really dive into this because it's fascinating, and I wanted to make sure people know where to get it.
Yeah, I think if anybody's had a triangle experience, the book is fascinating. I'm not just saying that to sell the book, but it is because there's not another book quite like it, I don't think. It's available on Amazon. It's called Triangular UFOs of the United Kingdom by Colin Saunders. It's available in hardback, paperback, Kindle, and there's an audio version as well. So you can get
Amazing.
that on Amazon.com. Uh,
Perfect.
if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I think Facebook Messenger would be a good starting point. I'm always willing to chat to anybody who wants to talk to me either about their experience or anything that's
Absolutely.
happened to them.
All right, guys. So you've seen triangles, you've had an experience that seems anywhere familiar to what Colin has been describing or what you read in his book, please reach out to him, as he said. Let him know your story, and maybe there's a part two book down the road, Colin. And if there is, you are definitely welcome to come back and talk about it. You're welcome back anytime if you want to talk about anything that's happened or some more of the research you've done. You've always got a spot here to come and talk about it. So that invitation is always there.
That's very kind of you, Rick. Thanks so much. I've enjoyed it. It's been really good. I
It's
hope your
been
listeners have enjoyed it too.
Oh, I definitely did, and I know my listeners will for sure. So thank you so much, Colin. I will definitely keep in touch. I'm going to be getting the audio version of your book today, so I'm excited to actually dive into that this afternoon. So thank you so much, Colin, and it's been a pleasure having you here.
It's been cool. Great. Thanks a lot, Rick.
All
Take
right,
care, mate.
all right. You take care too, my friend.
Cheers now.
All
Bye.
right, Papier. Bye bye. Well, there we have it, guys. I tell you, that was so interesting and so exciting. I once again want to thank Colin for coming and joining me. This was an interview that I've been looking forward to for since we set it up, and it's just a topic that I've told you guys many times that it's a topic I am fascinated with. It's some of the first research I ever did from a young age was after hearing my mom tell her story. It was what led me to go to the library and start just digging into UFOs and any books I could find. Back then, there was not really any internet. Trust me, guys. So you had to go to a library and take out books, and that was how you learned. And so the internet has made it so much more easy for you to go and research this information. And I've probably seen 90% of the UFO documentaries out there, the alien documentaries, Ancient Aliens, you name it. I'm right there with you guys. I've watched them. And, some of it I get, some of it I don't get, some of it I believe, some of it I kind of shrug at. But I'm definitely opening to hearing all sides of it. And this is one that I find fascinating because, as I was saying to Colin during the interview, I just wonder if these triangle ships, if there's something new or wasn't seen a lot in the past, because you kind of do hear this progression of people seeing these cigar shapes, and then you see a lot of people talking about the classic UFO when you think of a flying disc, and now we're seeing these triangular ships, and it just makes me wonder, these triangle ships, if this is something that's a more current event. But as Colin said, they're back to the 1500s they reported this. So is it something that, has been just more common as of late? But I just remember when you start diving into the whole triangle ships, it's fascinating with the UFOs. And the fact that Colin got to see one decloak in front of him is incredible. And it really, can you imagine that? Like you're driving down a road, you see some lights on the road, and then all of a sudden this ship decloaks in front of you, this triangular ship, and then you see all the different angles, and then you see the big, what we called the mothership in the distance. At least that's what he thought. Fascinating stuff, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. I'm definitely going to hope to get Colin back on again and see if he wants to talk a little bit more about his book. Please, guys, check out the description. I'm going to leave links in there so you can go and order his book. You know, as he said, you can get the hard copy. There's soft copy. You can get it on Kindle, audiobook. So definitely pick it up, guys. It sounds so super interesting. I did get through some of it because I do have it on my phone, so I was trying to read it the best I could. But as I told you guys, I get a killer migraine if I read for even 10 or 15 minutes trying to read a book on screen. I need the physical copy in my hands. It seems that's what works. I don't get headaches from it. It relaxes me. Or audio I love because I can go putter around the yard, do whatever, and put my headset in and listen to it. But reading a book off screen, like, not good. Not for me. So definitely going to be getting the audio version. Looking forward to hearing that and then talking about it definitely down the road. So thank you guys. Once again, I appreciate all the support you guys do. This is amazing. I'm having so many amazing guests on here. Got some great guests lined up for next month, which is super cool. Don't want to announce it yet, but I definitely got some incredible guests coming up. Somebody I've wanted to interview since I started doing this, and I'm really, really looking forward to that interview, and that will be coming at the end of May. All works out. It's going to happen at the end of May, so hopefully you guys will tune in for that. But I got lots of other great interviews that are going to be coming up before then on so many other different topics. We're going to get into some really good stuff. So please, guys, I hate to ask, but please subscribe, like it, and share it. It just helps get my content out there. I hate asking, but I mean, it's just one of these necessary things on YouTube. One of these necessary evils, I guess. It does help with the algorithm, but I just hate asking. But hey, maybe I can get to 500 subs, which would be awesome, by the way. I mean, you guys are incredible. You really are, and your support means so much. So thank you, guys. I hope you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. And remember, stay safe, take care of each other, and you are the greatest. Remember that, guys. And I will be back very soon with another amazing interview. So stick around, guys. Thanks.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.